even in a Christian marriage, you can end up unequally yoked if you have completely different understandings. Because just being unequally yoked is not specifically reserved for believer and unbeliever. It's just a difference in mindset.
Only speak to people that can check you, that can call you out, that can, you know what I mean, that are actually on the side of the marriage, not on his side or your side, but on the side of making the marriage work, you know.
What's up, friends? Jeremiah here, and today I'm not by myself. I have a very special guest with me in the house, and you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Oge.
So this is Oge, my lovely, amazing, beautiful wife. And today she's joining me so that we can talk about some marriage secrets for Christian men. And ladies, don't worry, your episode will drop next week. We're actually going to record it right after this one. But this week is for men, next week will be for ladies. And why are we doing this? There's a special occasion going on, and that's why we're recording this. So do you want to tell them about it real quick?
Our anniversary, our 2-year anniversary is coming up.
Yep, we are celebrating our 2-year wedding anniversary, and it just went by like that. So since we're coming up on our anniversary, we thought it would be great to just share some of the things that have been helpful to us in our marriage. And so we're just going to talk about the things that are helpful for men. And like I said, next week we'll talk about the women's side of things. So I'm going to kick it off. And for me, I think the biggest lesson is that not every marriage is the same. Or let me put it this way. No marriage is the same as the other. And I think this is the biggest lesson because even listening to us today, you might think, oh, I want to do things the way they did it, or I want to hear or craft my marriage or my relationship the way they did theirs. But understand that we came from different backgrounds and our backgrounds are different from yours. And so you can't just like try and copy and paste. And if you have that mindset that someone's marriage is different from yours, yes, you can take some lessons, you can understand what makes marriages work, but you can't like copy everything and try to apply it to yours. It might actually lead to some frustration. What do you think about that?
I totally agree with that, because everyone has different backgrounds. Even with your spouse, even with your spouse, you have a different upbringing. So imagine now 2 other different sets of people that have vastly different, cultures, backgrounds, beliefs, morals. And yes, we can have similar things that we agree upon. We can have, similar standards, but ultimately the things that I've been through is completely different from the things that any of the other, parties involved have been through.
Yeah. What do you think is something that is helpful for a man? Maybe like in the first 2 years of marriage. We're still new to this. We're still considered newlyweds, right? But what do you think is a helpful piece of advice for a man going into the first couple of years of marriage?
Well, this is both helpful for men and women, but I would say for a man, definitely giving yourself grace, giving yourself space, time, patience, because a lot of the times people emphasize patience for your spouse, patience, to help them to grow, to catch up, to learn. But patience with yourself is also very important. Ultimately, you may have never done this before. Ultimately, you probably haven't done this before. And even if you have, it's not been with this particular person you're married to, or you're getting married to. So you are going to see them in a new light, with a new set of responsibilities, because prior to getting married, this person was your, girlfriend, but now assuming a new role as a wife, the mindset shift is not overnight, so giving yourself, even the mindset shift from boyfriend to husband, it's not an overnight thing. So just being patient with yourself for sure would be my first advice.
What do you think of the saying or this quote that says like you're a husband before you become a husband, like even in your boyfriend season? Is it something that you think is true? Is it something that you think is not all the way true, or what's your thought on that?
Well, I think it's more of like a preparation. I don't think you can ever be like a husband before you become a husband. There's certain things that are only reserved for when you actually become a husband. Right. Certain privileges, certain things that you can even correct in your future partner, that are only reserved for being a, but definitely it would rather help than hurt to start getting your mind around the notion of even leading a family, around the gravity of even like having someone else's, being responsible for somebody else, and I know you definitely can touch more on that, but it helps to at least to prepare yourself to leave your family, to leave, your father and your mother's house, not only physically, not only financially, those are important, but especially mentally, because you're creating your own home. You're creating a new home that is under Christ and everything. So what does that look like in a practical sense? I would recommend just having your future partner be more involved in decisions, and like the little decisions, building the trust, building the, at least knowing what kind of advice they gave on certain, like, big issues, and then becoming, becoming bigger issues. So essentially, like, slowly get, because you don't want to wake up and then it's like, whoa, this person now become my after God, my second highest priority, and whoa, like, it's too much too soon. No, yeah, that would be a very.
You kind of slowly want to grow your mind even before. Once you know that you're preparing for marriage, like, it's not just about planning a wedding. It's about getting your mind in that place to lead a family, to be the man in the house the way God wants it to be. Right? Am I getting it right? Yes, what are you saying? Okay. All right. So for me, I think, just speaking back enough of what you said, submitting to Christ is essential for any Christian man, because there's a way the world portrays men, there's a way the world portrays marriage, that if you don't really get the umbrella correct, like the umbrella being, it's either Christ, it's either the way God does things, or it's the way the world says things should go. And the ideas of the world, like, oh, if it doesn't work out, like, you can just go here, or you don't have to put in this much effort or whatever. On the women's side, which we'll talk about in the next video, it really sometimes has to do with submission and the way it's misunderstood. But on the man's side, even the way the world portrays loving your wife or loving your family is completely different from the way the world might from the way God might portray and describe it. For example, God says you should be willing to lay down your life for your wife, and of course for your family. But the world might tell you that, hey, like, you're still your own man, you're still your own person, like, you can't let your wife dictate this and do that. Whereas the word also says you should submit to one another. What do you think or how do you think a man should navigate that discrepancy? A Christian man should navigate that discrepancy between what the world says and what the word says.
First, I believe that just for you to have a thriving marriage, or for you to create a thriving marriage, you have to have some common ground. You have to have a meeting spot, a meeting place, because you have lived, at least I would like to assume that a lot of people didn't grow up with their partners, which is usually the norm. They didn't grow up, like, at least even knowing their future spouse. So you live completely different lives from this person, meaning that whatever the experience has shaped them and molded them to who they are now. So what I mean by a common, like, you have to have a set of standards that you both agree with, because if you live your life based on, what you believe is right or wrong, you're never gonna, some major things you're not gonna have a good, place to lead from, or you can't move forward if you don't agree on certain things. So that's why the Bible and Christ and the standards and the, everything that the Bible teaches is a good foundation for a home, because it removes certain things out of your partner, and it removes certain things out of you, certain harmful things that would be detrimental to a established and loving home. So to answer your question, I'm sorry, can you repeat your question?
So how do you navigate that discrepancy?
Yes, how do I navigate? So I think first of all, it's submitting under one set of standards, which is Christ. Submitting to that, and then having an individual relationship. So when it comes to, like, now relating to your spouse, whatever expectation that your spouse has placed on you is based on what you both agree to submit to. You know what I mean? So it's like, now me submitting to whatever you're, like, telling me, or whatever you're guiding me or leading me is based on the word of God that I already submit to, you know what I mean? So, and vice versa. So it's not as though you're trying to like mold me or shape me into a completely different woman that you, or the woman that you intend, but rather you're guiding and shaping me into the woman that God had and has intended for me. And it takes out a whole lot of self.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like even in a Christian marriage, you can end up unequally yoked if you have completely different understandings. Because just being unequally yoked is not specifically reserved for believer and unbeliever. It's just a difference in mindset. So if I'm someone if I call myself a Christian and I come to the marriage with like, oh yeah, we can just do whatever we want. If you inserting some worldly standards, some worldly practices into our marriage, and whereas you are coming to it like God is my authority, then we're unequally yoked. It doesn't matter if we're both believers. I think that's what you're getting at. But I mean, okay, let's backtrack a little bit. We didn't really give a lot of background when we started. We just dove straight into it. But background wise, we got married. You had just turned 24. I was already 24. So we got married when we were both 24. What do you think so far? 2 years into it, would you do it over? And of course, they were talking about men, but like from my perspective, like seeing me, and you can be brutally honest, it's okay. Seeing me as a 24-year-old enter marriage, and 2 years or almost 2 years later, what do you think? Would you have had us do it maybe at 26 or get married a little later in terms of maturity, or whichever direction you want to go into it? What would you say?
So I believe there are definitely pros and cons to marrying at 24. Definitely a huge con would be financials. We're literally just fresh out of college. We haven't gotten like established financially, which was a big con. But ultimately, I think what was important to me at 24 was just how teachable we still were, how moldable, we both were. So to answer your question, your original question is, would I want to do it exactly at 24? I would say yes. Not because the financial struggle part was fun. It was not fun. It was not fun, but just mainly because I got to have an input into, like your character, or into like certain things that would have been a little harder to like call out when you were 30 or 35, because by then you're a fully formed adult,
like
Exactly. You're more set in your ways, and I'm more set in my ways and everything. And I would have a harder time adjusting to accommodate what and it's a different weight of authority when it's my husband telling me, hey, I don't like this and I don't like that, than it would be, because you could argue, well, we could have dated till 30 something and then still kind of adjust each other to our preference. But it definitely would have like been different, because you don't have a God-given mandate over my life as my head, So I do like that we were both 24, because we got to see the stubborn parts of our life, and certain things
we're still seeing. I mean, it's only 2 years, so we're still seeing.
No, but like, even certain things that I would have seen as okay, or I would have seen as like, oh, that's not a big deal, but not, seeing how, no, it's really not okay to be that way, or to act that way, or to, even certain mindsets, there was a more like drastic teaching curve, or learning curve rather. So that is what I'm most grateful for, is that we definitely, we were able to like come into this with still a mindset of I am flexible, or I'm adjustable, or I'm teachable, I'm coachable rather. And I could go on and on with the synonyms, but you get my point. Yeah, you get my point. Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. And same for me. I mean, I would, like you said, it wasn't fun all the way through. There were things that we needed to learn. There was a lot of adjustment, but ultimately, I feel like marrying early is a hack, because it depends on what kind of life you lived before you got married. But in our case, right, we are we weren't completely wilding out as people won't be, as singles before we were dating or even before we were in Christ, by God's grace. So by marrying early, it saved us that kind of like headache. Yes. And who knows? Yeah, we could say that we could date for years, but who knows what could have happened in that time period. Things don't always go according to plan. And we got married because typical Christianese, we felt like God was leading us to take the plunge and get married and stuff. But it doesn't mean that it was completely smooth sailing from there. So my piece of advice is that as a man, you need to be adaptable. And I was talking to a friend a few weeks ago, and I told him this. He said, what is one of the biggest lessons I had learned? I was like, you need to be adaptable. You need to understand that even if you're not starting at 24 like we did, wherever you're starting from, you need to be able to shift, because different seasons are going to come in the marriage. And if you are set like, okay, this is who I am and I'm not willing to change or adapt to the different situations, whether it's financial, whether it's emotional, whether it's, we can talk about that in next week's episode, like what it was like getting pregnant 2 months after getting married, things like that. You're like, whoa. I've never lived with a baby in my house before. My sister is only 2 years younger than me, and I'm like, now I have a whole kid. Or even before that, now I'm living with a whole pregnant woman when we just got married. So how do you navigate that if you don't have the mindset of adaptability? Things won't always go according to the way you plan it, but you should be willing to change and of course submit to God in doing that. That's the ultimate thing. So you got anything else? We don't want to dive too deep today or get into too much today. We just want to give a short few tips. You have quick fire tips that you have for a man who's getting into marriage right now?
Well, I don't want to start a whole new point because it might need some elaboration, and we can dive in a little later on later episodes and things like that. But just to kind of talk on what we've already touched on and everything. Definitely pray about where you are, pray about where you're wanting to go. I feel like that's definitely a big part. It helps a lot when you look more at your own, at yourself as you are right now, and then look at where you want to go, and then pray in terms of how do I navigate, or how do I at least start making steps forward. For instance, we talked about mindset and create essentially having a mindset to become a wife, having a mindset to become a husband. Okay, if you feel like you're a selfish person right now, if you feel like you have certain things, and just being honest with yourself within yourself. If you feel like there's certain things, okay, I don't know how to make my girl or my man, my current boyfriend of a higher authority than my parents, then that's something that you really need to be honest, to yourself and to your future partner about, hey, this is where I'm at. This is what I'm not really sure how to go about doing this. And then it could start with little decisions just little things that don't really have a big impact, should I get gas now or should I get later, or just something like that. And then having their input and
kind of making that inclusive,
exactly.
Including them in your life
exactly
before it gets there.
Exactly, some really practical steps. And then that would definitely be
You touched on, I know you said you weren't trying to raise a point, but you touched on the parental side of things. As a man, we have people who are unable to leave their parents and cling to their wife, and you have people who are inserting external influences into their marriage. Just quickly, let's touch on external influences, and we can talk about this in the ladies episode as well. How dangerous is it for a man to make other people the external influence of his marriage? Obviously not counting God. God is included in the marriage, and so besides the man, his wife, and God, anything else is external. How dangerous is it to include that?
I mean, I definitely saw this for many years growing up, so I mean, you definitely know more on that story, but just to touch on it a little bit, it's so disastrous to the marriage. It's so harmful because you essentially live an open home, and that's not safety for anybody in the home. There could be so much coming in and it's attacking. And I speak a lot. I speak metaphorically a lot, but my main point is there is no there is no security. There is no mental security, because anybody or anything can come in and influence the way you see your family, or the way you relate to your spouse. And your spouse is you and your spouse. I mean, definitely God is the biggest part, but like, you're the main foundation of building a home. So when you have that not secure, when you have that not locked tight, I mean, don't get me wrong, no man or no woman is an island, but my main point is, if you are gonna talk to anybody because you're overwhelmed, let's say, okay, I'm about to make a really rash decision, or I'm about to do something that I know I'm gonna regret, or act out of emotion, only speak to people that can check you, that can call you out, that can, you know what I mean, that are actually on the side of the marriage, not on his side or your side, but on the side of making the marriage work. So if you don't speak to people that are on the side of the marriage, like this marriage, you know what I mean, then you're just gonna have people pulling y'all apart, like pulling y'all on this side,
taking sides,
exactly,
instead of working for the good of the marriage.
Exactly.
They're like, oh, this is my girl, I got her, or this is my guy, I got him, and stuff.
Exactly.
So yeah, there is a place for the external influences. There's a place to like hear advice, but it's like, don't make that what guides your marriage. It should be, you should be growing yourself in Christ, both husband and wife, to talk about things in from a Christ perspective. But in the moments where it's difficult because maybe emotions are running high, then you need to have those people that you can kind of talk to, but it shouldn't be like, or that person. It really is like a very, very small circle of people that should be able to influence your marriage in the way of advice. But when we're talking about external influence, the biggest factor is family, or extended family members who can insert themselves into marriages, and we see it all the time where marriages fail because of that. But we're gonna pick up from this point in the ladies episode. So if you're watching this before a week from today, when this video goes live, then you'd have to wait for a few days before it comes out. But if you've already watched this, or if you're seeing this weeks after it's posted, the ladies episode will be popping up in this side of the screen, or this side, somewhere on the screen. The ladies episode will be popping up, so we'll catch you there in that video. See ya. God bless you.